Hi, everyone. Welcome to Where Do You Go Now? Live at 4 p.m. every Thursday. So, we have an awesome scheduled call today, and we just lost one of them. But anyway, let me take the pleasure in introducing why this was created, and then I'll get into the nuts and bolts of who we have speaking today, which is an awesome panel. So Where Do You Go Now was originally created, the live Q&A was created back when the coronavirus first hit the pandemic back in March. And the reason it was created was our entire team got together and realized, how can we give back to the community? Um, yes, we can do food, we can do clothes, we can do all those things, even toilet paper. Sorry, I had to just make that little joke. But we came together and we realized, okay, what can we do? How do we give back? And how we gave back and how we thought about it is, well, we're all real estate professionals, whether we're investors, realtors, brokers, you name it. We thought, why don't we give back through education? So that's why this was created. So without further ado, I'm going to get into introducing you to our panel today. The first woman that I have the pleasure of introducing is Yvonne Sucic, who is an investor for over a decade. She specializes in multi-units, as well as, which was really interesting and why I'm super honored to have her be a part of this panel today. The past 5 months, she has taken upon herself to go out and travel the United States through different states to educate herself on what's going on in those real estate markets. So she's going to touch on that today, which is super awesome. So she's also a licensed realtor with our team, which is amazing. I'm so excited.
Yay!
Yay! I love you, Yvonne.
I love our team.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, my dear. So I really appreciate it. And now in introducing Catherine Moreau-Su, who has also been a longtime investor for over a decade. She specializes in a Airbnb superhost, as well as she's been an investor outside of the state of California through multiple states as well. So she's going to touch on that as well and educating all of you. Both these ladies are going to educate you on why are investors leaving California? What's really going on? I mean, honestly,
they're running.
Yeah, right. Ever since COVID hit, it's the market has changed drastically and continues to change, and especially with the election going on currently in today's market, right? So, without further ado, welcome, Catherine. Welcome, Yvonne. Super excited. Catherine is also a licensed realtor as well with our team, so that's awesome. So without further ado, I'm going to just get started. Are you ladies ready?
We are. I'm so excited to be here. I just want to say real quick, because Catherine, I think Catherine's brilliant too. Catherine's a pit bull, and I guess when Bruce Norris and Catherine started moving out of California, that's when my light bulbs went crazy. And that's when I started really checking things out, because Catherine, you've done so well in the California market up till now. And you're doing well now, but I think you're really looking ahead of the game. So I'm extremely excited to be here and on this panel with you especially. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you both for those kind words. So I can't wait to talk about some of the things we've all sort of been going through, and anyone who's in the market right now has been going through seeing changes. We've got a very hot market. It's a very competitive market, and that's very exciting, but we're also seeing an exodus out of California. So I kind of wanted to talk about what's driving me, and Donica, I'll let you take it because I think you have some questions, especially like what motivated me to.
I do. So are you ladies ready?
We're ready.
I'm
ready.
Perfect. Okay, so the first question I have for you ladies is, like I said, and the whole title behind this call. So I guess let's start with you, Catherine. Why are investors leaving California? I mean, what are some of the recent policies that are pushing out landlords and investors, included like yourself, Catherine, Airbnb hosts?
Yes. Well, so I noticed there's been sort of a transition with being an Airbnb host, and I love using Airbnb, and it's paid my bills for many, many years. Um, but we started to see the cities, not just in California, but many cities worldwide started to enact regulations and legislation. I tried to make that one word, regulations, that make it impossible or severely restrict the ability to host on Airbnb. And I understand some of that. There are some reasons behind it, but as someone who built my business around being able to host full time in Santa Monica, Malibu, West LA, Culver City, Venice, it's become impossible or virtually impossible. So I've had to kind of figure out how to make that money work. And then the other things that have happened is we had statewide rent control get passed last year. And even though we voted, a majority of people voted against rent control, it got passed anyway. And it's sort of like the government has a certain leaning in the state and they want things a certain way, and they're going to force those things regardless of the will of the people. So that was very disappointing. And then we've seen a number of bills show up, assembly bills like Assembly Bill 1436 and 3260. Those two assembly bills have just been put on, in the last few months. And I'll get these emails saying, hey, you got to call your representatives and let them know to vote no on this. Because one of them is basically says there will be no rent collection permanently or indefinitely, that it's actually possible to never be able to collect rent from your tenants. So I felt like it was whack-a-mole. I was getting these emails, and seriously, like every couple days, I'd have to be calling my representatives or sending emails or going to websites and saying, please don't do this. This is really bad policy. This is, you're going to cause less and less rental property to occur because people aren't going to stay in a market where they can't get their money back out of. So I was sort of seeing these things happen. And I think also with COVID, it made it possible to do things remotely that were not possible before COVID. So the blessing of COVID and the coronavirus is that now there are things we can do through Zoom and remotely that were not really available to us before. And it meant a lot of people now can work remotely. They don't have to be in downtown LA or Beverly Hills or Westwood. They're finding alternatives to that, and it's causing some people to look outside of their traditional, like, oh, I have to be here because my job is 30 minutes away and I have to stay local to that. So that's what I'm seeing. What about you, Yvonne? What are you seeing?
Well, and I love that you know the numbers of the bills because I get those constantly, but I feel the exact same way. I don't know who your representative is, but in my district where I have rentals, it's Monica Rodriguez and District 7, and she weekly sends letters through the mail, not email, that says, tenants, you do not have to pay your monthly rent. And then in the very small print, it says, but you will have to pay it back in 12 months, which no one's reading that or understanding that. So people are believing that they don't have to pay the rent. And what happened, I had someone move out of one of my 2-bedroom, 1-baths in January, and then COVID hit. The moratorium started coming, all of this, they don't have to pay rent. We're going to help them out. So I have lost almost $20,000 this year alone because of fear, because there's nothing worse than having a tenant in there. And California is tenant friendly, not landlord friendly. It does not support us. Here, everybody, they're constantly saying we need housing, we need housing, we need housing. But if you try and buy a property, you can't make the payment on that if you can't collect rent. So I have really started looking where Californians are going. And that's my big hang up this year, is just that our representatives do not represent the money in California. They are representing, this is one of my big sayings, and I don't want to offend anybody, but those who contribute the least benefit the most. And it's extremely frustrating because pretty soon, and I love that little thing you have, Catherine, that says the last man standing in California who is going to stick it out, which might be me, because I never wanted to leave the Valley or California. He got a tax bill for what, $1.2 billion to pay for everybody else's stuff because everyone left the state. So I'm just kind of waking up and seeing things differently. So that's
Yeah,
my.
I mean, that's a big joke, right? It was something I shared a week or so ago about the last guy in California gets stuck paying the entire tax bill for the whole state of California. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But the other thing that I just want to point out about California is it's a great market for appreciation, and I've certainly benefited by the price points going way up in ways they don't do in a lot of other markets. But having appreciation, that's one play that you can do as an investor. And if you're buying at a high price point, like we are in California, I know investors are making it work, but it's very hard to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house for $1.2 million in Sherman Oaks and rent that for, I don't know, $3,500 a month. Like, even no matter how low your interest rates are,
you're not breaking
really hard to make that cash flow. Like, you have to really figure out like ancillary markets, go out to Bakersfield, or, like you have to like figure out, or you can do an ADU. You can hack it certain ways, but it's much more challenging than a lot of other places.
So that brings up my next question, ladies. Can you actually cash flow in California as an investor?
So I'll just kind of start with that. So, and piggybacking on what Catherine just said. So one of my mentors and coaches taught me, when I look at investment property, the acronym is IDEAL, right? So I look for income, depreciation, IDE. What's my acronym for?
Appreciation.
Yeah. Income, depreciation, equity, appreciation, and leverage. And so when I'm looking at things like that, I look at what will it cash flow. And because I'm old school and I like living on an acre and having my space, and I don't want 5 ADUs in my backyard and looking out the window and staring at my neighbor, I'm probably not taking advantage of all the ADU benefits. So for that reason, I'm probably not benefiting like some. So when I look at California, I know people are doing it and they do believe they can cash flow. I'm just not seeing it. And Catherine, what do you think?
I think if you're an investor who got in a different market, so I have a property right now that I'm selling that I purchased in 1996. So my basis was real low, and I paid what now people would consider, a nickel for this property. I've done very well. And I think if you play long, you can still do well if you're willing to put up with all the bumps and hurdles that California is throwing our way. It's just when you start to find other markets and other investors, and I've traveled quite a bit and met a lot of other investors that I'm like members of clubs with other investors. And I would say that I was from California, and people are like, are you crazy? Like, you could do so much better anywhere else. Like, why do you do that? Why do you put yourself up against that? And I think Christy Sirtwell and I had this saying that I think was from Peter Fortunato when we complain about the things in California. And he said, well, you're not a tree, you can move.
Right, right.
Great point. Great.
No, it is. And I always say, if you bought in before 2000, I really believe, and I was born and raised here and didn't make the smartest choices or decisions all the time, but if you bought in after 2000 and the skyrocketing, even through the 2002, 2005, 2010, the market, had its ups and downs, but I want to make a lot per door. I just don't want to be breaking even. This is my lifestyle. This is how I want to live. This is what affords me to travel in my RV, and go. I want mailbox money. That's what turned me on, meeting especially all the women in real estate who invested. And I think there's just so many other states and cities and locales that are cash flowing way more than California. And the reality is we do pay for the weather here.
Okay, so then Yvonne, here's my next question. You started. Where are investors going, and where is the cash flow then?
Well, so one of my favorite guys who kept me with integrity and morals in real estate, because I met a lot of slimy people, Bruce Norris, the Norris Group, right? When Bruce started going to Florida, and you know, you think in Florida, old people are going there to retire, but the old people need nurses and caregivers. So he's finding houses built, move-in ready at $200,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that are renting for $1,500 to $2,000. You give that a few years, and that's giving you the equity, the income, the appreciation. I don't think the Florida market's going to change too bad. I personally like multifamily. So for multifamily, I look wherever the market cap rate is greater than 8. And that tends to be the Midwest, Indiana, Indianapolis, Kentucky, Oklahoma. Those places you can still get apartments where market cap rate's greater than 8 and you're cash flowing. But people like, my road trip consider of everything west of Colorado, because I'm a weather snob. Let's just get real. I do not do well with humidity. This big hair ain't dealing with humidity, okay? So I looked every place west, and there are so many opportunities out there. I'm shocked at the Idaho market, how it's blowing up. Seattle, Oregon, and Washington was about 25 years ago. People started exiting, which I was still young. Well, I'm still young, but I was young, and I just was the diehard. I want to stay in California. I love where I was born and raised. But I'm seeing people go to Montana, Idaho, Colorado, Oregon, Washington. If you're looking for an equal lifestyle to California, a little bit more snow, but no humidity, and still a lot of opportunities. And I'll just transition into that with Catherine, but what I've been doing is making connections with realtors all over those states, in the cities, so that our team can help you transition out where we see properties cash flowing. So I'm not going to give all the gold nuggets away. If you're interested, definitely contact us. Catherine, you're on the east, so you tell me what you did, because I know you went to North Carolina.
Well, one thing I just want to point out to people too is you can invest in any of these areas. You don't have to actually go live in them. So if you're someone that doesn't want to be in humidity, you don't want to be in snow, you can choose a market where, where you still maybe like to retire or something without having to commit to actually going there. So, I've had investments in Utah, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas, Alabama, sorry. I've had a whole bunch of investments in different markets, but it's possible to just hire a management company and do that, and you don't make as much money. It's a bit more passive, but it's an option to just sort of not have all your eggs in one basket too. So just want to put that out there. Now, I really like Tennessee. I really like Texas, and I really like Florida. Of course, it depends on the city, but I like those markets because they also have no income tax. So we're seeing a lot of people who are making the choice, again, as I talked about, since COVID becoming more Zoom friendly, that people are leaving New York City, people are leaving some of the bigger cities and going into smaller areas, and they're attracted to the areas that don't have income tax. So I'd say Texas, Tennessee, and Florida, have certain reasons for that. Also, you get a little more landlord friendly. In all three of those states, they're more landlord friendly. In Texas, if you don't pay your rent, the landlord can actually take your stuff. It's amazing. Like you would never do that in California.
Right?
So, the evictions are quick, and they just sort of understand more of the business nature of things. So I would just mention probably those three markets I really like in big picture, right?
Big picture. Also North Carolina. I have to give it up to North Carolina because Amanda Williams, one of our, team members is from there. But that's where my first duplex was. I was sight unseen from Los Angeles. I acquired a duplex in outside of Raleigh that was cash flowing $500, $250 a door. And And just like you're saying, you can get a management company, you can have friends, boots on the ground to help you do that. It's possible, and it's a great way to start to bring the money back.
Okay, but I'm going to interject only because I used to do that. I used to have a management company with a company that we all know, and there was major fraud going on. So my only caveat to that is be very, very careful in finding a management company, finding people that you know. I suggest if you are going to go out of state, spend some time really educating yourself on the management company, the friends that you know, to really make sure that this is legit. Because without saying names, we know an investor that was investing in Utah, and I was a part of that. I had 24 doors, and guess what? It was a very reputable at the time, but I didn't spend enough time. And look at that person there; he's in jail, and so is she. Right?
And the thing is, and I'm a firm believer what Oprah always says, watch your money. If we just put our money out there, and the whole thing about why I love multifamilies is you have to manage the managers. You've got to be on top of it constantly. If you're just looking for mailbox money and you're not going to do your due diligence or make sure they're doing their inspections, one of my requirements, which is probably different than Catherine's or many, is I like 3 times a year 24-hour notice surprise visits. So just about every 4 months, I want them to go in, check the water, because water leaks, mold issues are so costly, right? So that, and you find out if they're growing marijuana or if they have animals destroying the property, and you also get to know the neighbors. So I think you have to manage the managers to make sure. Otherwise, I agree with you 100%. You could easily lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty and easy what you guys are talking about, but realistically, being somebody that's been on the other end that's gotten burned, luckily I broke even, but there are a lot of people from that situation that lost a lot of money that we all know, investor friends of ourselves that lost a lot of money. And it's very, you got to be careful.
You do. And that's why it's so important to have a group of people like, our team with eXp Realty. We're also all investors. And it's also important to join, real estate clubs. And I'm a member of clubs that aren't in California. So in Tennessee, I'm a member of a landlord and investing club that's in the market that I'm in North Carolina as well. So it is really good to at least get those emails, ask people what they think of this property manager, get referrals. You're going to be a part of a group that's going to tell you about things like Flume, which monitors water and will send you a notice if your water's been running for more than, an hour or something. You'll be notified. Like, there are tips and tricks like that if you're connected and plugged into the investor community. So that's really invaluable to just stay connected with people. But yeah, go there. I mean, I invested in Utah too, and I invested well because I went there in person. And I looked at the properties in person, understood the marketplace, and that property has actually appreciated quite a bit over the years. Not quite like California, but it has appreciated. So, if the economics are in place in the area and you do your due diligence, you can do okay.
Definitely.
So that brings into my next question in terms of rents versus cash flow. Where are you seeing that in other states? Can you touch on that? I know it's not to give golden nuggets, but really educate those. And
yeah, well, so I got to spend a bunch of time with Amanda this summer, and I did a number of videos that are on my Facebook page if anyone wants to go look at them. Catherine Malaya. So I looked at one house, for instance, was 250,000. It could rent because it had like a lower level. It could have rented separately. So I think one of the units, if you rent it separately, would have been like 700 and maybe 1,100 for the upstairs. So 1,800 total. Or if you did the whole house, it would be like 1,300 to 1,400 for the whole house. And at 250,000 with 20% down, $50,000, your mortgage would have been like based at 3%, right? So you have to kind of look at what is realistic as an investor to get a mortgage. Let's say you got a 3% mortgage, then the mortgage would have been $800 a month. So in that particular instance, you could potentially be cash flowing, $1,000. That doesn't include insurance, it doesn't include repairs. Obviously, you have to account for some of that and vacancy, but that's a good spread, right? Like we don't see anything like that here in California. So
No.
most of the houses I was looking at were between 200 and 250, 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses in suburbs, in decent areas, recently flipped. So these are rent ready, like not turnkey, but just like on the open market selling, in that range, 200 to 250. Rents were, 1,200 to 1,800 approximately in that general vicinity. That was in Raleigh, which is a growing city. So that's a market I would invest in.
Yvonne, can you touch on that?
Well, I got, my mind went totally elsewhere because I was thinking, when we were talking about why are we leaving California, right? I agree with Catherine 100%. But why are, and it's interesting because what are we, 26 days away from a presidential vote? And I think everybody watches the presidential votes. And I'm not going to get political on here at all. But
please don't.
No. But I think it's so important for everybody. So many people I know do not go to the yearly voting or their council people or their judges. They don't know what's happening in their own neighborhood. And these are the things that are the most important for you to be aware of what's happening. Because then one day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I'm not allowed to do this and I'm not allowed to do that. And you weren't paying attention. And and it's really important to understand because I remember when we were voting on, do we want to continue building in Los Angeles? And everybody said no, but a no meant yes and a yes meant no because they wanted to, level it out and not get so congested. So it's important to know because the key of this whole topic is why are we leaving California, right? And there are other places out there. There are other places. Now, all I look for when I'm looking to invest is what is landlord friendly. And that's one of the reasons I think everyone's going to Idaho. Even though I'm an environmental health specialist and I believe in regulations, there is nothing regulated in Idaho. Idaho, it's crazy. But that's why people are going there because they can do so much and they're not being regulated on it like we are. We have so many regulations that, like Catherine's saying, we could get people in our places that, oh, I lost my job. Oh, I'm moving out. I can't pay you. And then they can sit there for 4 to 6 months. And when you have a mortgage, that makes it hard on you.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I just have a question because I've never been to Idaho and I know that Boise is a very hot market. I've heard a lot of good things about that area. Tell me, can you give us an example? Oh, am I not supposed to talk about it and tell everybody?
It's okay.
It's bad. Don't go there.
Okay, so I'll change the subject.
No, I actually want to know what the price point is.
So I will say, so 5 years ago, you could probably buy in Boise area for 100,000. You could probably buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house for 100,000. Last year, so I was there. Yeah, I was there August 5th this year. I had 2 friends buy houses August 5th last year for $100,000 less than what I'm buying for. So I'm buying a house right now in Idaho that is going to be a custom build, 4-bedroom, 2 baths, granite countertops. I'm not lying, $350,000 in a great neighborhood, good school districts. You can go down the street and inner tube on the river, which was the funnest part for me. 350,000. And so, and it is booming so bad. The cornfields are just coming down and people are moving in. And I give it 2 or 3 more years and it's going to be a Southern California for sure.
What are the rents for that 350? Like what kind of rents are you getting?
Honestly, you could go anywhere depending on the neighborhood from Nampa, these are all outskirts of Boise. Nampa, Meridian, Star, Eagle, Boise. You could go anywhere from 1,500 to 3,500, depending. So the house I'm looking at for 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, my goal is to rent it for $3,000 a month because there's a shortage of people who just want short term. And I want to go on that too, Donica. But I think we're all figuring out how to make more money on short-term rentals because we're not locking ourselves into a year and they're easier to evict.
Absolutely.
So that brings my next question. Okay, let's role play here for a second. I'm an investor. I'm new to California. I invested last year. Obviously, with all the new tax laws that are coming to play that are basically not benefiting the landlord, like you talk about, I want to leave the state of California. What do I look for as a good investment outside of the state of California? You both have talked about the landlord laws and regulations. You know, are they pro landlord? Are they pro tenant? The old saying in California is pro landlord, you know, not pro tenant. So what are the things that are considered a good investment out of the state of California, and what do you look for when you want to invest out of California?
So what I look for is where the job's going, right? I look for economic growth. And you can find this information on city-data.com. I used to use USA.com all the time because it told you. But I look for economic growth, school districts. So many people want their kids in good school districts. Now it's all changing though, because with COVID, commercial businesses are realizing that people can work from home. Before, companies were so hesitant to let people work from home because they thought they'd cheat, they wouldn't be working, everything would go down. And what they're learning is people are happier working from home. They're working more, their production's up. So that's the main thing I look for is where is the job growth and the economic growth? Catherine, what do you?
I would say you need to look for the size of the city. And,
Sure.
Probably 100,000 plus.
Or more.
If for particular neighborhoods, you can use Zillow heat maps to understand how the crime is in that neighborhood. You can dive deep. City data is good. Like some of the posts in the forums, people will talk about in forums whether or not there's crime or what the current factors are. You might find out there's a dump down the street that nobody, that the people there know, but if you're from outside, you don't know. So once you're getting more granular with, hey, I want to be in Austin or Nashville or somewhere in Florida that you picked a city, then you got to go pick the neighborhood. But the jobs are the key thing, the economic growth. I mean, go somewhere where it's growing and not contracting. Like Raleigh is a city that's growing. So that's, great because those are the cities like you just talked about in Idaho, it went up 100,000 in 1 year. So we are able to see appreciation in areas that are not California. It's just not quite as common to have the home runs that you get in California with our market cycles, but that exists in Florida as well. So, some of the coastal cities are going to have those big upticks. So you want to be able to time it if that's important to you. If cash flow is what you're going for, it doesn't matter that much if it goes out. If you're not planning to sell, that doesn't really matter. So, looking at jobs, looking at things like, does the community have a Walmart, a Home Depot, a Starbucks? Those are the sort of things that are indicating that, that the demographic is there to support the rents that you want to get. A hospital.
I look for all that. That's so true, Catherine, because one of my things is 100,000 plus. I look for an international airport because I travel so much. So is it easy to get in and out of, right? And, talking about that, because there's some opportunities happening, even in Austin, Texas right now. I have a friend who's buying in Austin, Texas, and Austin is hot. I always say, whenever there's a Four Seasons hotel that's moved into that city, it is a hot city. Okay. And that's Austin. But there are some opportunity zones in there that are still sketchy neighborhoods that, would you go alone? Would you get out of your car? I don't know. But they're on the outskirts of really good neighborhoods and they're rising up. So those are great places to take opportunity in. And that's what I look for.
You know, speaking of opportunity zones, we got to do it. We got to do a Zoom call about that. That's like a whole other subject. And when I was in Raleigh in Amanda's neighborhood, which is a real nice neighborhood with, you know, $300,000 and $400,000 homes, which, you know, in that area, you can still buy homes under 100,000. So that's a nice executive 2-story, 2,500 to 3,500 square foot homes. And on the opposite side of her street, in the same community that was gorgeous, it was opportunity zone. So, you know, opportunity zone is a way for you to defer a lot of taxes. It's, you know, it's a whole technique for tax deferral, and we'll talk about it on another call because it's a great subject, but utilizing opportunity zones in conjunction perhaps with multifamily or with, you know, one of those one-offs where you find this opportunity zone that's actually in a really good neighborhood, you know, that could be a real home run right there.
Yeah.
And you know, we decided to do this call. I just want to say we decided to do this call because Catherine is selling all of her rentals, right? So did Bruce. My cousins, who really turned me on to real estate as an adult, they're selling all their real estate and to get out of California.
Just one note. I'm not selling all my real estate. I'm selling my California real estate. I'm not selling Utah. I'm not selling Tennessee. Right. Like, I'm still invested. I'm just selling California.
California, I'm sorry, yes. And I what I want to say about that is because all day today I've been working on how can I make money on this vacant unit. And, you know, also when I was with you at your Malibu home, we were talking about your Malibu Airbnb and how you foresee what's happening with Airbnbs, because the reality is, and this goes back to my voting conversation, because people are voting out, and I understand why not everybody wants Airbnb in their neighborhood, especially if you have a multi-million-dollar home, you don't want a bunch of strangers coming in and out. I do understand that. But it's when there's got to be a way for the homeowner, the landlord, to afford the payment. And a lot of younger people are buying and short-term renting out rooms to afford the mortgage payment. So I think it's important, again, when it comes time per year to vote on what's happening in your neighborhood, be aware, because what's happening in my neighborhood, and I live in I don't even live in a good neighborhood. I live out in the country where there's horses, but I'm not in Westlake by any means. But people are coming out here and they're taking the acres and they're getting rid of all their horse property. And that's why I moved out here. I moved out here so I could have chickens. All my neighbors have horses. And now they're telling the state of California, the regulators are saying, you cannot claim this property as agricultural horse property anymore, because they want you to, when you sell it, they want you to sell it and parcel it off for single family homes. And so that's destroying the neighborhood where it's giving us all space. That's a huge problem in Shadow Hills, Lakeview Terrace, anywhere where you still have horse country. So that's another reason people are leaving and they're cashing out. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So in closing, ladies, can you touch on 1031 exchange and how that works for people that have investment properties in California and they want to take it elsewhere?
Right. So, I mean, 1031 is really a magic gift from the IRS tax code. And it says if you're taking a property that has been an investment property and you're going to buy another investment property that's worth at least as much, then you can defer the capital income tax gain into the next property, and essentially forever. You can 1031 until you die and never pay the tax on the increased value. So if you bought a house for $500,000 in Van Nuys, a couple years ago, and now you can sell that same house for $750,000, and it wasn't your home, you were renting it, but you held it basically for at least a year. And by the way, this is not tax advice. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant, blah, blah, blah.
It's just going to say. Your disclosure.
Education. This is sort of
at least 2 years, Catherine?
There's debate about that, but at least a year is probably safe. You had to have owned it for the reason of investing in. In other words, just because you were flipping the property and it took you too long to flip it doesn't make it 1031 qualified property. It had to be something that you were intending to use as an investment. So you rented out that house, and it's a couple years later, you've made some money on it in appreciation. Now you can take that property, go to, let's say, Boise, Idaho, buy a couple other houses to replace it for 350,000, put a couple of those houses together, take that equity, and you don't have to pay tax on the gain as long as you're reinvesting it, as long as you've got a loan of equal value. You've got a lot of sort of checks and balances you need to do to make sure you qualify it, and you absolutely need a 1031 intermediary. You can never touch that money, or you don't have a 1031 and then you have to pay tax on it. But it's a way that you can level up your investments. So I represented a buyer a few months ago, just before COVID, who sold 2 properties that were in outlying areas that had appreciated. And she was able to use the equity from those properties to buy a much better property in an area that was, a lot better area, and use a 1031. So she didn't have to pay tax on it. And now her portfolio is better because she was able to do that. Sometimes you can 1031 into getting a property where you double your cash flow just by 1031ing your property. So I just want to point out that that's a great tool to use if you do own property in Southern California and you want to take it to one of these cash flowing markets like Raleigh or Boise. We have people in our team that are actually licensed agents in those areas that we know and talk to like every week. So we have people we can put you in touch with that we trust that can help you find replacement property for your 1031. And we have 1031 accommodators that we work with that we would refer you to. So we have some options if that's something that appeals to you.
So let me just clarify, for those listening, it's only for investment properties, not for your own principal residence, correct?
It does not apply to your principal residence. The gift of the IRS for principal residence is something called a 121 exemption, and that allows you to defer or to have tax-free up to $250,000 as a single person or $500,000 as a married couple that you get as a gift from the IRS that says, if you lived in this property basically for 2 of the last 5 years, you owned it and lived in it. Again, there's a few caveats. You got to go to your CPA and make sure you got this all right. But basically, you can take $250,000 to $500,000 and just put it in your pocket and have that gift. So maybe you want to go, buy something or go on a vacation or do something with the money and then take the rest of the money and invest it somewhere else. But you can actually cash in on that money if it's your primary residence. So that's just a different rule. It's the 121 versus the 1031.
I want to just touch on 2 things. Yeah, I'm sorry. And that, Catherine, you're so up on all these numbers and laws, and I can't even think right now, but it's Proposition 13 I'm thinking of, right? That saves your taxes. So it goes back to, I want you to think just not only for, we're talking about investments and we're talking about rentals, but also think about the elderly people and your parents who bought way back, 1970, they bought a house for $22,000. They did everything they could to work it. Because I know my dad, if Proposition 13 got thrown out, he could not even afford the property taxes today on the property he lives in. So again, it goes back to knowing what you're voting for, right? Because some of these things just get slid in and you don't even know you're voting for it. But I think it's important because everyone thinks the presidential election is the most important election, and it's really not. The election that's in your neighborhood that's affecting you is what's important. And
that's the election that you actually have some control over, because your vote actually, has a lot more power if you're only voting with 900 other people about something or 9,000 other people versus millions and millions of people.
Right. And California.
So your neighborhood vote matters.
Yeah. Your neighborhood vote matters so much. And I'm not trying to deter anybody from investing in California, because look, we still see a lot of people selling and a lot of people coming in, right? People are selling, someone's buying it. Oh, and what I want to tell you about Idaho, there's certain states, don't tell them you're from California. And I highly recommend renting a car without California plates on it when you're in that neighborhood, because what has happened, and it's really not our fault, but because of the equity in our properties, we've sold here you know, a house for 5, 6, 700,000, and we've gone there and jacked up their prices. So we're pricing some of those locals out, which makes it hard, and it's understandable. But I always say the reason people are leaving California is because I wouldn't be moving if our population wasn't 15 million, right?
Yep.
Well,
So,
and you know, Yvonne, I just want to touch on something too that I want to bring up to people about Prop 13. And Prop 13, which caps your property taxes in California based on what you paid for the property at the time you purchased it. It can go up if you make an alteration or you improve the property. It can go up a bit because of that. But basically, we do have this one gift in the state of California, which is your property taxes are capped at that. So my property taxes I pay on a property I bought in 1996 are really, really low. And that's great for me as a homeowner. And you know, in different states, the property taxes can vary quite a bit. Texas and Florida both have higher taxes, in my opinion, you know, dollar for dollar. Tennessee were relatively low, in my opinion. Anyway, those are things you have to look at when you're buying. But I do want to point out that there is a reciprocity agreement, that's the right word, with the state of California. If you are over a certain age, and it might be 55, it might be 62, can't remember the date offhand, but if you sell a property, let's say you're in LA County or Orange County, and you go to, I don't know, you go out to Riverside or Sacramento or something, and you buy like a nice ranch, and you know, and you spend a bunch more money and have like this beautiful property to retire on, you can keep your basis in many instances in that county if the county has a I can't say it, a reciprocal agreement with the county that you're leaving. You might be able to keep the basis of your property taxes if you are moving to another place within California. So if you are of a certain age and you're looking at maybe just going somewhere where it's quieter, that's possibly something that would help you. So I don't remember the names of what that is called, but it's something to be aware of if that applies to you.
You know, this conversation near the end just really did make me feel old, because I am looking at retirement and I am looking at these things. I mean, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, I wasn't even thinking of taxes, right? That wasn't even where I'm at. And now all I'm looking at is states where I want to retire so that my money's protected. And the problem is, California is taxing us so much that my money's not protected here anymore. I think that's why landlords are leaving.
That's a very good point. So in closing, ladies, where can these folks get in touch with you? Because you have so much knowledgeable information to provide for people watching. Are you willing to give that out?
Absolutely. So I can be reached. My email is my name, Catherine Morea. It's catherine.morea@exprealty.com. And that's KATHRYN.MOREA@exprealty.com. You can also find me on my Facebook page under Catherine Morea or Catherine Morea EXP Agent. So any of those, you could also reach me at 1031chick.com. So I have that website. So there's a number of ways you can reach out to me, and you can of course comment on this in the Facebook watch party that I'm hosting, or in Donica's Facebook Live. If you want to reach out and have questions about 1031ing or about other markets, you know, between us, there are a lot of information that we have. There's a lot of information, a lot of expertise within our group. So reach out.
And you know, I just want to say, because mine's the same. If you see my name, I'm at exprealty.com. You can like us on Facebook. There's always a way you can find us, right? But what I do want to say too is, and I'm kicking myself, because if you're a realtor out there and you are watching this, you know, when I joined the team, our stock was $7 a share. And today our stock was what, $53 a share, and everyone thought it wouldn't work. And people are coming over, and we have an amazing team in Southern California. We're working in 10 states. Please, we are building our team. If you are interested and a realtor and want to talk to us, contact us. We're always building our team. And what I love is what I love about our team in real estate, we're out to help each other. We're very supportive. I've never seen so many people just want to get on and help you instead of cutthroat. We don't play those games. So there's always ways to find us.
Thank you, ladies. I wish you the best. Awesome as always. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.